Are we self-introducing?
Yes.
Well, let's start with you. Oh, no, you set up. Okay, so my name is John Welchman. I'm coming from the furthest distance, all the way from Los Angeles. What can I say? Well, I'm a professor of the history of art, criticism and theory at the University of California. I'm also the chair of the newly organized foundation for the artist Mike Kelley, who passed away in 2012. And I gave a lecture yesterday, which will be my formal contribution to the proceedings. Today will be an informal contribution, as you will see. I gave a lecture yesterday about Mike Kelley's very interesting project called Mobile Homestead, which introduced a number of, I suppose, irritating concepts into the idea of public art, something that Kelley did not like or found very difficult. He found the conditions of commission, reception, and production of public art, all of them to be highly problematic, and especially the notion of producing an amelioration, a supplement for the good in public space. He found this to be a difficult idea. He also found the idea of public work being static, not moving, as almost all of the work we've seen today, for example, has been in many ways and unavoidably is. He didn't like that either, hence the concept of the mobile homestead. Anyway, I won't repeat that lecture. That's who I am. Over to the artist.
Hello. Thank you for inviting. So I was born in 1988 without any previous warning. But now I become an artist in a way. I'm still young, and I'm currently living in Ghent, Belgium, where I'm at the HISC. Now it's going to be my second year. But still, I consider all my shows as public experimentations. So I'm trying to deal with the relationships which forms between the consumer and the artwork itself, and in how many different ways it can be and exist. And yeah.
Okay. So what we're going to do is nicely compatible with what you did, because I think it's the opposite, in the sense that we will also have a conversation, but mostly we'll go through some recent work of Indriķis, project by project. We'll look at it. I'll ask questions. He'll talk about it. We won't get more complicated than that, but we can take some questions at the end. But Indriķis kindly donated me 4 minutes at the front, 4 minutes of the time. I think we have enough time, so that I could just make a couple of comments of a more general nature about the many, many interesting things that it seems to me we have talked about today. The conference has touched on many, if not most, of the aspects of how public art functions in the public domain. It's touched somewhat on the history of how these forms emerged. But I just wanted to make a couple of comments, perhaps developing a little bit from Helena's opening remarks, and most other people have touched on some of these things. But I just want to fill in a couple of, the gaps in this history, or some of the points of overview that seem to me very important. And actually one of them follows up from exactly where we just ended up, this idea of the plinth or the platform or the presentational mode of public art. Because I want to call that language a language of transmonumentality. It's a form of negotiation with the monument that organizes itself in relation, in an antagonistic relationship, precisely to that setting up of a profoundness based on names, based on history, based on national identity, that we see in traditional forms of the monument. I wanted to also note that modernism itself, as a movement, tends to have offered a form of gestalt consolidation for the formation of work in the public sphere. So that, if you like, within architecture, the building itself is no longer an armature on which is presented supplemental details, decorative friezes, caryatids, portrait busts, such as I see dotted around in the extraordinary Art Nouveau and early 20th century architecture of Riga, including the hotel in which I'm staying. Extraordinary work, but in a sense, the architecture is a support system, a scaffolding for a profusion of decorative, often figurative addenda. And modernism takes that away and tries to produce the building as a unitary form, in which case the building itself has a sculptural aspect. And if anyone's interested in developing that thought, there's an interesting book on Frank Gehry's work, and I wrote a chapter in that book which is precisely about how the architecture of Gehry relates to sculpture, which he very much insists that it does. And I think both for interesting and very creative reasons, and also for a number of problematic reasons at the same time. So that's the first point I want to make. The second point maybe is, how then does modernism precipitate something outside of its own shell structure, a supplement that's not on the building but maybe beside the building, near the building, on the forecourt of the building, although the forecourt is part, in a sense, of the modernist design of the building. And interestingly, I think one of the first moments in the 20th century where that form of public negotiation for sculpture takes place was at the United Nations. So early on in the history of the United Nations building, already by the end of the 1940s, certainly by the time we get into the early 1950s, you see the beginnings of a project, a consolidated and bizarrely international project to place modernist-type sculptures all around the plaza. And of course, and predictably perhaps, the language of sculpture that's used for these first public commissions is that of Henry Moore and to a certain extent Barbara Hepworth. Barbara Hepworth, for example, produces the first, I think I'm right in saying this, the first abstract outdoor sited sculptural work, goes into the United Nations in the very early 1950s, and that obviously creates a trend that's followed up in the Chicago example that Helena talked about, and many other examples which follow on a little later. One interesting note, Henry Moore's declension of public sculpture through the very traditional duo of the mother and the child, which was very important to Henry Moore, found, and this would go to some of Dimitri's remarks, found an extraordinary echo in some of the Soviet-era sculpture. So on the grounds of maternality and universalism, in fact, Mother Russia meets Mother England, if you like. This was a very interesting moment of rapprochement, maybe the only one in the 20th century, we could argue, between the visual ideology of the Soviet Union and international modernism, that's to say after like 1928. So that's the second point. A third point, and I'll be very quick about this, I think one thing we've missed out a little bit here is the development of public art around media provisions, around systems of the media. It's very important, obviously, in the history of New York postmodernism that in 1982 the first use is made of the Spectacolor board, massive LED signage systems. We're all aware of this. Jenny Holzer, one of the first artists to use it. At the same time, Krzysztof Wudiczko is pioneering a system of projections and remote formations of public art that I think is really very interesting. But actually, to me, those are late arrivals in this history, and the first arrival of this hasn't really been noticed by art history. I don't mean this to be an advertisement for my research, but I've just finished a book on early conceptual art, which precisely looks at what I think is the most important project in early conceptual art, but it's outside all of the history books. If you read a history book on conceptual art, you'll see this work, that work, Joseph Kosuth's dictionary definitions, and so on. This work will not be in any textbook, but it is a work by Kosuth, and a much more important work than the dictionary definitions, which are like painted, almost like paintings ripped from the dictionary. This is a work called The Second Investigation, which took place in 11 countries. It was a 3-year project. It's So not quite as long as Norbert's Norway project, but getting on in that direction. But its express aim was to move the definition of the world, everything in the world, all relationships and concepts gathered up in the world, filtered through the one encyclopedic instrument that focused knowledge in this way, the thesaurus, right? That dictionary where you get all the different concepts, words and types of the knowledge structure that we have assembled in the sort of fantasy idea of a Victorian collector of knowledge. So Kossuth put the thesaurus self-consciously into every form of media delivery system that was available in the late 1960s. This began in 1969, it was finished in 1972. So he explicitly used every form of publication available, daily newspapers, weekly newspapers, magazines, serials. He even used Women's Wear Daily as one of the vehicles for the placement of these sections of the thesaurus. He used billboards. This is actually the first sustained use of the billboard in the history of art, beginning in 1968, 1969 in a remote desert location in New Mexico. He used urban signage. He used advertisements on and inside buses. He used handbills, flyers, posters. He used radio and he used television. So it's about it in terms of media delivery vehicles for 1969 to 1970. So in a sense, there hasn't been a larger and more ambitious form of public delivery of art than the one that was ushered in the second investigation, 1969 to 70, and no one knows about it. It's kind of a paradox. The biggest diffusion of the biggest subject matter, all knowledge, is the one thing that we don't know. So I just wanted to point that out. So, having said that, I think it is an introduction. I've been thinking about this, obviously, to your work, because I think I'm going to make an opening proposition that Indriķis's work actually stages an interesting dissolve between the relationship of the art object and the spectator. And I think your interest, as I read it across many projects, and I'll stop talking in a minute, we'll see some works, but what I picked up on is that you stage what I am calling the dissolution or the recalibration of the spectator. Mm-hmm. So the spectator of an artwork is someone who comes from somewhere to a gallery or to an outside space and looks at something. And I think in your work, you actually take the spectator, turn the concept of spectator activity inside out, and work from there. And it produces a very nice, I think, paradoxical relationship to the questions in public art and public space that we're talking about. So let's look at some stuff.
Yeah. Should we start?
Let's do it in the order you have it.
Yeah. So, I would say this is the first series of video works I made in 2012, I guess. So there were in the show there were 3 video works, and this particular is there's this traffic sign, no passing, with a red and a black car. So at that stage, I was still interested to create these live events I imagined actually from my childhood, and I was kind of afraid of these things to happen. So that's why I thought it's worth to create. So that's a still from a video work. So it's looping constantly, and every 3 minutes those 2 cars passes. And I did the same thing with the small black children, which also is in the traffic sign, and then I build a video work like this.
You see what I mean about turning, this is rather literal, this is turning the car inside out, this is turning the signage inside out, but I think that's really a strategy that you've developed and that you do in many different kinds of ways with twists and turns.
Now I feel really comfortable with it, and I don't like it. So I have to push borders. You're gonna see it. I haven't changed till 2012, but it leads somewhere, I guess. And then there's this is a view from the show. So I created afterwards from the car. That I filmed the video works, and I thought I have to finish it. So I created this car as my own point of view, and then there was those tunnels in the walls as three perspectives. I had all those ideas when I was traveling somewhere. So, but that was also I was traveling with my girlfriend to my countryside house, and I thought we have each of us has its own reel, and that's I thought, okay, I'm leading her to my countryside, but she sees it totally differently. So that's how it started.
And these apertures or holes in the wall, what are they? What are they? Literally different points of view onto the viewing of this car with no back and no front?
I know, it's like going outwards in space. It's I created those tunnels as in a perspective, so it points that the car is my point of view, and I'm in a way stuck in it.
Okay, and this is in a gallery space?
Yeah.
Is that the ideal location to exhibit it for you?
Particularly this car, or all?
I mean, could you see this outside, or does it have to be? I mean, it looks like it's
scare
hot.
people like that. Those cars and something. It could be a performance or something, but that is a video documentation of a performance I did.
Sorry, did you install this as well on the street or no?
Car?
Yeah.
While I was transporting it.
Nē, pie tabakas fabrikas tev bija.
No, that was different one.
Not this particular.
No. So okay, but I think we should.
Yeah, let's move on. Yeah.
So actually, this was before. These are also video works or video documentations I created. And in these works, and this is you from the show, I was thinking about our senses, the way we see and the way we hear, and then I created this work while I was on Erasmus in Enschede, Poland, Aki Artists Institute for Fine Arts. So, and I was traveling somewhere with the train, and I somehow realized that if I close my eyes, I'm not able to see what I hear, and other way around. So I had this feeling about two dimensions, and I'm this connection point between the two. So this is how I complete these two senses in one.
So you're collapsing the performer into the instrument.
In a way,
sense.
and
Yeah.
he's playing the instruments while he's in, and then they're playing simultaneously. Okay, let's go further. So, this was a show where I created this angle in the wall, and all the artwork in the space was deformed by it. So I was interested in how one mistake or one input reacts differently with each artwork. So, and this is the first work I created as a single platform where I depict how three different visitors sees a single object or a memory. So you can see three different shades of violet. That's how they could remember it. And there was a video work where I transporting those three collective memories around the city.
But in that case, it's a memory only of colour and not of form. Clearly. I mean, the form is the same.
Form is, but there's also a scale involved, which with which I'm dealing afterwards in another show. I'll show you.
Yeah, that's coming up. Okay, good.
So, and this one. This is a recent show. So this is, also, I was imagining the situation when two visitors or spectators are looking at a single object, in this case, shell. So, as they see it differently, each of the spectators, there is this difference in the scale. So that's why, because one of the visitors were higher than the other, so that's why the change happened. But you can see with the indications, I'm somehow suggesting that sometimes we are agreeing on we believe for a similar thing, but it's actually a different size, or the meat that's like in some symbolic way can refers to everything.
So it's about perceptual relativity.
In a way.
Yeah. And these shelves you constructed, or are they IKEA-like?
No, I construct everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
You did it so well, I mistook it for IKEA. I don't know if that's right.
Few architectures really want them. They're not gonna get it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is different view. So, but then there's this video work. It's also documentation. This is about the scale in which art can exist. So I painted those paintings according to the height of the visitor. So as the visitor is shorter, the painting becomes bigger. And if he's higher, the painting becomes smaller. And if you imagine that process will go, then at the one side, the meaning of the artwork would take over everything, and at the other side, it would vanish. So, yeah, this is like.
I wonder how tall you would have to be for it to vanish. I mean, twice as big as human height, or?
Yeah, I don't know. Like we have to imagine that. That's free space.
And the object was to make the paintings as identical as possible?
Yeah, I tried.
So that's, again, yeah, well...
Yeah, that's actually, they're looking at the single painting, so I'm copying them in the three. So that's also the situation, how three visitors in the museum sees an identical artwork. Same.
And what kind of decisions did you make about what went into the actual artwork? Is that supposed to be a generic...
In the painting?
Yeah, in the actual painting.
That actually came out freely from my imagination. I thought I should paint something with the forms that somehow indicates about it.
Things that would have scale built in within them, different colors.
Yeah. It's not, in this work, it's not about the painting, it's more about the scale in which art can exist. And you can see that actually they are not looking at the painting. I cut it out, those silhouettes in the wall. So actually they are standing in the next room, the neighbors. So I'm indicating that there is not one common space they're being in.
So the painting is incidental.
Yeah.
If you like, it's a scale remainder.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Let's move on.
So this is my vision show from just had. So, but this is in this work I was also there are relationships between spectator and the artwork itself. So these works serves as a cover for how the visitor perceives an artwork. So in this case, the abstraction serves as the only clue for common understanding in a way. But yeah, I'm really interested how my creation is observed by different spectators, because everyone has different knowledge about art, taste or understanding of a beauty, so there forms countless meanings that stays inscrutable for me. So that those relationships will stay unknown. So that's why I like to make these to create these sculptures of these relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I find that a very dramatic image. It's like someone has come in like Errol Flynn, hanging onto the curtain and flying through the stage, and then plastered themselves. I mean, it's a cross between Errol Flynn and the superhero or something. So it's difficult for me to kind of cross-correlate that with an ordinary spectator of some kind, because it looks so ghostly, otherworldly, cinematic. It might be a horror movie. It conjures up many things rather than the art spectator.
It works already if you see it that way.
Okay.
So that is my goal. For me, it's like it's still a mystery for me. That's I like in the work. Just
want to go back to that. Yeah, overall image.
Yeah. Then I don't.
Because on the other side, right? I mean, clearly the figure has entered with flat feet, walking in a normal way, and then gone up on tiptoe. It's like the cat raising its hair, right? Except the person has gone up on their tiptoes, tiptoed over this, pool of blood or whatever you want, however you want to read it, and then continued their normative trajectory.
Yeah, actually, I imagine the carpet more like a detail from a museum. Because
what kind of detail?
No, like a small capture from a museum. Imagine. So, because that's my first memory of a museum.
The carpet. It's the carpet.
Yeah, my first museum, I think, which I remember of, is with the red carpet. So.
And the red,
because that's why here.
Yeah, no, I saw it. You like the red carpet,
It's coded in me.
I thought your father might be a diplomat.
So that's also how the visitor turns the sculpture in different meanings. So for me it stays abstract. That the way he perceives it stays as a mystery for me. So I imagine that perhaps in this work, behind this work and this work here, the actual artwork is being hidden.
So these, in a way, these spectators are on the way to seeing something that isn't shown.
That I'm not able to see.
Okay.
But because there forms a relationship between the artwork and the spectator, which I'm not aware of. Because I'm not able to see the way he sees, and that stays as a mystery for me as a creator. So I'm already making that's the structure from which I'm creating artworks. Imagine.
But you want to give the suggestion or the hint that there is something museological there through the red carpet, through the red curtain. But just a hint of the. I mean, it's a bit like when Hans Haacke wants to indicate a museological relationship between two parts. When he laid a red carpet between the two parts, and then he put the red velvet stanchions. I mean, that's an example that couldn't be more distant from your work, I think. But actually, it uses the same color coding and the same kind of museological institutional suggestion.
I think it's different for me, definitely.
No, I think it's very different. But the one thing that's common is that red carpet. Yeah. Okay.
But it deals a lot with the way we imagine. So every one of us imagine differently, right? I would like to believe, at least. So that's how I thought that.
Okay, should we move on?
Okay.
This is another detail. Oh, we saw that detail, right? Yeah.
So here's a close-up.
Did you make the footprints?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I like this idea of patiently becoming a sculpture. I mean, it reminds me the setup of the deflated figure. Reminds me a little bit of those early works of Sarah Lucas, the Pauline Bunny, a sex bomb without a detonator, as I once described it. Anyway, but this is again quite different because it's coded in a completely different and rather more deliberately awkward way.
Yeah, I thought of them as characterized artists who patiently are creating in artwork. Because I was reading this book After the End of Art by Arthur Dante, and he was comparing Brillo boxes by Andy Warhol both in the museum and the supermarket. And then that somehow inspired me to create something like that about the ability to push the borders or change the meaning of material, and that's about it. That's how I and this I used those covers as a metaphor, of course, as to reveal or conceal.
It's a bit hard to see how it connects with the Brillo boxes.
Oh no, that's
No?
it's not related.
It's just the concept.
It's just a concept
Yeah.
about the artist being an artist and his abilities.
Because there's something always very deflationary, right? Some people inflate, but you deflate, right? You've sucked the body out, right? Also in the work in the we'll see in a minute the work in the railway station. You do something similar. You've produced a silhouette. You've produced a footprint. You've left indexical traces of the passage of someone. You've caught a figure up as if they're flash welded to a curtain. I mean, these are all gestures where you've subtracted bodies from their proper proportions and identities and left ghost-like vestiges. In a
I don't
sense.
know what to add. But okay, but if I have to comment this work, I was imagining a long fence which has which forms a bigger structure, and each of the fence board has the same mission and purpose for the structure. So it stands for bigger meaning to border a private space from the public space. So my intention with this work was to deconstruct this structure, to create new meanings, new missions, and that's how I thought of this idea to characterize these fence boards. And this sculpture in the middle, it serves as a moment before he left the other sculptures. So it indicates that it's not going to be possible to reunite again the structure. So, but I like to think of these works as acting sculptures.
Mm-hmm.
That materials acts like sculptures. And you can see the plastic acts like water, and the wood like fence board and as a park bench. Yeah, but still, it's really new work. I have to think about it. It's the way I like to create a mystery for myself, and then I can live with it for some time.
Yeah, this is the work that, when I made the comment about turning and reversing some of the terms that we've been discussing today, this was really the work that I had in mind, because, at the most obvious level, you've taken a schematic representation of exterior space, because this looks like it's a park bench, not a sitting room chair or something. Yeah. The fence obviously signifies something outside, but also its own boundary condition. Mm-hmm. On one side of the fence is something, on the other side of the fence is somewhere else. You've taken the concept of the spectator, again, with the body removed and only the trails and the tracks in one instance, and these kind of armature-like remainders of the figure left on the other hand. So embodied spectatorial encounter in interior museum space is completely, by every index, scrambled and turned inside out. I think that's what's most effective about this work.
In a way, that was my intention.
Okay. Do we end here? Is that's the last one, right?
We can finish.
Well, if there's another one, I mean, that's a good place to end because it was so.
Now it's crushed. but still as an artwork. That part I really like, because when I entered the museum, the position was changed. The sculpture was changed without my notice. So
What did they change?
this plastic is broken now, and it lays on the ground.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It was a surprise.
Museums are surprising places.
Okay, this is detail.
Good. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
No? Any question? Leva, how much time do we have?
2, 4, 5.
We must finish.
I got one. Do you want to, Helena, do you want summary questions as well? I mean, do you want to come up here and conduct, for the whole day?
Thank you so much.
Sure.
It was as fascinating as yesterday, and Indriķis is a big hope of ours. But for me, the day doesn't finish yet, because we are going to library together, so everybody is invited, and we'll see in our new public space, in our biggest public library, a lot of art books, and we'll be able to climb till the very top of the library and observe it. But altogether, I think that with this conference, which hasn't been huge but very well attended, we really start a necessary intellectual discussion about our public art program, which exists, as I mentioned, only two years. So we are planning to go ahead, and I hope that we'll have all events of today, intellectual events, in written form next year. My next master's students will be obliged to read it. Those who sit right now, well, you were present here, you'll escape. And we'll have some fruitful days in front of us. You're going to Daugavpils, to Mark Roscoe Center. And I think that each and everybody has to thank our visitors who came from so far. Also, Sana came from a very distant place. Some are more well known in Latvia. Some, I hope, will become friends of our local art community, which is quite vivid, as you could see from some of my few examples. So I wish you a very great afternoon. And now, last question by Crystal.
Thank you. It's actually a question for you. I'm going to take her strategy. I'm just going to make a really long comment.
Then I can
No, it's something I started our presentation with as well. You went to the Aki in Enschede, and now you're in Antwerp at the HISC. As part of my profession, I go visit a lot of biennials, and what I said at the beginning of our presentation, there seems to be something like this global art aesthetic, where objects, whether they're in public space or in a museum, they belong anywhere, everywhere, and nowhere. And I wondered, for a Latvian artist who takes half of his education from another country, do you feel it's important to develop a language or a practice that is understandable by everyone and anyone? Like, you use a lot of kind of humoristic, cynical things, which is of course a language everyone can understand almost everywhere. Or do you think it's important to develop something that's site-specific, that's rooted within a certain location where you show things, or a certain location where you practice things?
Actually, I don't think about those things. I'm just creating. I know that I'm a mixture between the two, as Evita is right now. And I think this is the moment when something interesting can form between two educations, two two different places. So yeah, for now I'm just concerning about my creation. I don't think about it.
And with where you live and where you work and where you are as an
It
artist,
influences definitely. Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily have to communicate back to that context.
I guess not. It's interesting to put it in different contexts and how does it work. Because
I think the cultural references that John made about the curtain are quite specific to a certain culture you are from. You caught that image. It wouldn't be my connotation.
yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I'm traveling a lot. That's with the curtain work was in New York, but maybe I was prepared to come something idea like that. Yeah.